Madison's lakes have been an advertised hotspot for swimming, boating, and fishing as early as the 1870s. From the balmy summer months to the ice of winter, fishing is a visible and vibrant aspect of the Madison community.
Well, it's relaxing and it's kind of a challenge. Sometimes you get out there and where you fished a couple days before, they aren't out there, so you have to figure out where they are now, you know.
A lot of times it's just by opportunity, like I'll keep poles in my tackle box in my car, and if I have a chance where I can just go drop a pole in for 10-15 minutes, I'll do it.
Monona Bay and Lake Wingra are widely popular among shoreline anglers. Both lakes are a part of the Yahara River Basin, a 360-square-mile watershed that was largely sculpted by glacial ice and outwash some 10,000 years ago. By some measures, Monona Bay and Lake Wingra have very similar physical and chemical properties due to their proximity to one another and related environmental history. But each lake is also unique, shaped in part by human hands and environmental influences.
Dredging in Lake Wingra during the 1900s disrupted fish habitat and caused the lake's water level to fall significantly. Gardner Marsh, an important part of Wingra's ecosystem and water quality, was physically separated through the process of dredging. Since the 1930s, Lake Wingra's surrounding area shifted from an agricultural landscape to an urbanized city. While the Arboretum helps protect Lake Wingra today, the separation of Gardner Marsh increased susceptibility to runoff from Madison's rapid development.
I've noticed the water level seems to have dropped quite a bit, and it's just a lot. It seems to be quite choked out, especially Wingra. That's probably the lake that I can attest to the most because I fished it the most and grew up on it. But I mean, there's a lot of places on the west end of the lake that I used to swim at when I was a kid, and now it's, you know, shin deep water. It's just filled in so much. There's just so much silt and so much algae in this lake.
I mean, you can see right here, it goes from grass to just rocks and into the water. So whatever spills right here is immediately put into the lake.
To the northwest of Wingra, Monona Bay sits glistening at the heart of the city and downtown area. Lake Monona's waters were once clean enough to support a thriving ice export industry and health spa in the turn of the 19th century. The expansion of Madison's capital and residential area of urbanizing busybody cars, industry, and people, however, left Monona Bay and the greater Lake Monona vulnerable to human impact. From the 1880s until the New Deal, raw sewage from the city was dumped in Lake Monona and Monona Bay.
Basically, what you can say is Monona Bay is a huge stormwater pond for all of the downtown, or most of the downtown, and much of the campus. So it's a stormwater pond. And if it's a stormwater pond, gathering pond, I mean, we don't think of it that way, but it is basically gathering everything that's gone onto the streets and down for decades.
Other known recorded instances of pollution include 2 petroleum spills, hydraulic fluid, and runoff from the 2006 Charter Street power plant.
Both lakes, likely natural eutrophic state, contribute to the growth of blue-green algae, a phenomenon that has captured Madison's attention since 1847. Excess nutrients from residential and commercial fertilizers have exacerbated blue-green algae growth, manifesting as a visible symbol of human impact. However, less visible to the naked eye are the toxins that lie beneath the surface.
If you look at these big multi-million-dollar efforts by the city, the county, the state, they all focus on phosphorus. There is not a single word about any of these other toxins.
Few tests have been conducted for both Lake Wingra and Monona Bay for toxicants in the fish and water, likely limited by cost and political controversy. Though the toxicants in Lake Wingra remain largely unknown, Monona Bay has more known toxicants.
There are many pesticides in the lakes from all the agriculture in the region, PAHs, which stands for polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon, pharmaceuticals, plastics and plasticizers, PCBs and mercury, copper, arsenic, and chlorine-based herbicides have been put into the bay on purpose to get rid of algae in plants for many times over the years. And that's been done by government on purpose, the city and the county, and it's also been done by private homeowners along the lake. Brominated and fluorinated compounds actually are probably in the lakes and fish. There are probably numerous other heavy metals that are in the lakes and fish here. because those also come from runoff in a lot of industrial sources.
The sources of these toxins are derived from historical and current influx of industrial, residential, and urban discharge.
The Charter Street plant, which is right there on campus, that used to be a coal burning plant. For years and years and years, it was a coal burning plant. They had huge stacks of coal right there. And some groups, Sierra Club actually did this great work where they had citizens monitoring the runoff from the coal piles going down the gutter, and it goes right into Monona Bay. And that, of course, is full of mercury and PAHs and many other heavy metals. Whenever you construct a building, when you dig and you grind and you wreck things down and you're doing all this, and that all runs off right into the bay. If you look at the sediments in the bay, you have layers of contaminants from all those activities that are still sitting there.
Asserting how much and which identified toxins in sediment accumulate in fish is complicated. Toxin presence in fish depends on the age, sex, size, and species of the fish. In addition, each toxin concentrates in a fish differently.
In Wisconsin, the greatest concern for contaminants, bioaccumulating contaminants in fish, are PCBs and mercury. And the PCBs tend to accumulate the greatest in fattier, long-lived fish like carp or big lake trout. For mercury, the species that accumulate mercury to the greatest are long-lived predator fish. So a bigger, longer-lived walleye is going to have more mercury than a smaller walleye or, say, a bluegill.
Each toxin has its own negative influence on human health. In general, mercury, PCBs, and small doses of lead influence neurological damage, while arsenic, PAH, and low concentrations of PCBs can cause various types of cancers. In general, women of childbearing age, children, and those with pre-existing health complications are more readily affected than others. Age, sex, type of fish, the parts of the fish, and how much of a particular species consumed all factor into toxic exposure.
If you eat fish with too much mercury, too much heavy metal, too much PCBs, and usually you have those all together, you're taking the risk that your child will be born with maybe slight 5-point lower IQ than otherwise, and you wouldn't necessarily know that. But, these are problems that take a long time to develop, and they're often subtle.
Individual angler behavior, risk perception, and profile further complicate human health risk and toxicity exposure.
I eat about, probably fish once every 2 weeks or so. My favorite is bluegills, perch, and then crappies. Crappies I'll make soup out of. I feel comfortable eating the panfish, but not the bass, and anything up on the food chain I don't eat.
The most I prefer fish species called the white bass, largemouth and smallmouth bass, and walleye. Those are the favorite fish that they've been eating today.
It's just like pan-fried walleye. It's just a really nice fish. It's easy to cook. They usually have pretty big fillets, and the taste is just the best. If I'm with a group and we may catch 20 to 30 panfish that are good size, we'll keep those. I'd say 90% of the time it's a catch and release for me.
Panfish, if they're decent size, yeah, I'll keep them and eat them. We clean them, flay them up, skin them, and then deep fry them.
I used to make fish soup, and I'd take the fillets off, and then I'd take the rest of the fish, I'd take the guts out, and throw the rest of the fish, the head and the bones and everything, and make a broth out of that, but I don't do that anymore. Or I read about bioaccumulation in gills and fat, well, I guess I can forego that.
I wouldn't eat fish every day out of any of the lakes.
Fishing and fish consumption also have underlying cultural, traditional, or subsistence significance that further influence risk.
Well, actually, I grew up in Louisiana, so you're on a farm and fishing there. And then as little kids, that's my son and his wife. And we took them fishing when they were little kids.
It's important. Back in our hometown, we do hunt and fish a lot. But over there, people are freely to eat anything because it's all clean, it's all healthy. Some of the fish, some of the family that just do cook the way they used to cook back in their hometown, their homeland. Over there, they just cut into pieces and put it into the pot and cook like a soup. If you cook like you cook a soup, the bone is in there, the skin is in there, then that means you get all the contaminant in the water where you cook.
A lot of the folks along the shoreline here are low-income people. They talk about eating this fish regularly. They need it for food, so that puts them more at risk. Many people, especially people who it's a subsistence activity for them. They need it for food. Are eating a lot of fish per week.
Self-caught fish consumption has been shown to vary by race. In 2009, the Midwest Environmental Justice Organization found that in Madison, 73% of interviewed minority anglers ate the fish they caught, in contrast to only 29% of white anglers.
Human health risk associated with fish consumption is communicated in several ways, primarily through the DNR.
In Wisconsin, catching fish is only half the fun. Preparing and eating them makes the catch even better. Fish is a great source of low-fat protein and is loaded with healthy vitamins, minerals, and omega-3 fatty acids. Unfortunately, some fish may also contain harmful contaminants, so it's important to pay attention to how much you eat and how often you eat fish and where they come from. That's where I come in. I'm Candy Schrank, and I'm a toxicologist with the DNR.
What we try to communicate is the types of adverse health risks that are posed by consuming fish that have contaminants. We use a variety of approaches. We have our DNR website, and we also have publications and have a variety of pamphlets and brochures that we try to make available to people, like say through our local DNR offices or the local county health offices. And so anybody can request a brochure. And then we also issue press releases and do a variety of social type, tweets and different types of media events.
I think mostly in the DNR pamphlets, because I hunt and fish, and so when I get all my rules and regulations, there's a lot of things listed in there about the mercury warnings.
Once you get a fishing license, they hand you the rules, and there they are.
Press releases, that kind of stuff, and the only thing that I can think of as far as Madison was, the small panfish and the amount of mercury that's in the fish, and warning people not to eat too much fish because of the mercury content. I don't subscribe to anything or don't belong to any fishing clubs or organizations, just what I read.
Despite the variety of communication means, these outlets are limited to those who have access to certain resources or abilities.
If you would, read some of the surveys that were done on all anglers, there's certain awareness that by different groups of people that are more aware than other people.
Not just my family, but in many other families, the way they used to cook back in our homeland, because the fish over there is clean. So the thing that they've been eating that for generation and generation in the past, they don't have any problem. But they don't know that here, when you have fish that way, you gotta harm those women and children, or the women that have pregnancy. They can cause the problem with that, but they don't know that. In my age, my generation, we don't have the education background in English. So when the DNR provide with the brochure that is all English in it, they cannot read English version, especially those fishermen and the women who are doing cooking. They don't read. So it's not very effective in the family.
The anglers themselves don't always know about the issue, and they aren't aware, and that has to do with structural inequalities in the first place. Lack of awareness, lack of resources, lack of time to engage. Many are working several jobs, they have big families, they can't go sit around at meetings and learn about fish toxins.
Across the country, studies have shown that fish advisories, press releases, and fish licensing information is less likely to reach minority and low-income anglers. For Madison, the Midwest Environmental Justice Organization found that 73% of white anglers claim to have seen fish advisory information, compared to only 39% of non-white anglers.
Probably one or two in the family able to read and understand, but not everyone in the family. So the good is if there is a workshop, if there is a meeting, or something that, or at church, that you can provide something, can provide information. Tell them that here in the fish that contaminate, how you're gonna have to clean, and that person speaks. That will help for a lot of help. Then you should put all the information and written and hang it out or set in the office and waiting for someone to come over and pick them up. So I recommend that in person, speak out in person. That will be more helpful.
When you start talking about fish in Madison, you know, it's a classic environmental justice issue in every way, in that, you know, people who are struggling most financially are more likely to be eating fish and needing it for food. You know, there are a lot of structural inequalities in our society, and there are a lot of disparities based on income, based on race, that together create a situation in which people of color and lower income people are more likely to be exposed to toxins in the environment. Government agencies are largely dominated by people from, you know, the dominant culture, which are, in this case, you know, Midwestern white people who, again, mean well, but don't understand or recognize race and class disparities in fish consumption risks or the cultural issues we're talking about. So it's really hard for them to see when they think about how to communicate or how to assess the risks. Those other cultures and those folks who aren't from there, they become invisible, and they become invisible, you know, in every layer of what they're doing. I think there are assumptions that there really aren't people who actually need this fish for food, and those are important misperceptions on the part of the government, because on that basis they think, oh, there's not much risk here for these subsistence of shoreline animals.
Fishing on the Madison Lakes, we're so fortunate in the Madison Lakes. Everybody who comes, people come from up in northern Wisconsin down here to fish panfish. And so I don't think people around here realize what a beautiful spot we have for fishing.
It's fun. I love to eat fish. It's just that I like being outdoors. It's a great outdoor activity.
Catch a fish or not, I always find myself in a better mood afterwards, whether I was successful or not. It's a lot of fun. It's relaxing.
Fishing is something that people enjoy. It gets people outside. It's healthy food, or it should be healthy food. So unlike other pollution problems where it's like pretty clear, yeah, this is a bad thing, fishing is actually a good thing. It should be a good thing. It should be, you know, something that we don't, you know, in which we don't have to worry about toxins, but we do. So you're taking something that's culturally important to people from all backgrounds. It's enjoyable, it's outside, you can do it with the whole family, it's free, and then you're saying, but there's these toxins.
A living time capsule of our past, the lakes are a reflection of our values that continue to shape the present and future. At the heart of the problem, toxicants in the lake and fish, though invisible to the naked eye, is an issue that is intertwined in Madison's community. Though communicating risk is a part of the solution, overall minimizing health risk disparities depends on reducing toxicant sources in our lakes. In particular, those with power must incorporate the unheard voices of all shoreline anglers and work towards eliminating the dangers posed by toxins.